Okay, we're supposed to be a democracy. I mean, legally, we're supposed to be a democracy. And I always considered ourselves a corporatocracy, which is Greek for corporate, corporations, and cracy is just rule, corporate rule. So we're dealing with corporacy versus capitalism. I seen some people on the news talking about Mandami and that guy from New York, and he got rid of some establishment Democrats. So the DNC isn't happy with him because they got replaced with progressives. But anyways, maybe you'll understand it a little better if we go through this. Capitalism is an economic system where private individuals and businesses own and control the means of production, with prices and markets driven by supply and demand. Corporacy is a corrupt political or economic system where powerful corporate elites, rather than the citizens or democratic institutions, dictate government policies and social life. The transition from capitalism to corporacy generally represents a shift from free markets to monopoly power. Okay, did you understand that? The transition from capitalism to corporacy generally represents a shift from free markets to monopoly power. It's because of all that damn deregulation that we got all these monopolies. I remember when I was a kid, they had monopoly busters. But that's not what our public servants are doing now. They're doing what's in their best interest, which is against the law. A key difference at a glance: feature capitalism, individuals, entrepreneurs, and businesses of all sizes. Corporacy, mega corporations, massive conglomerates, and financial institutions. Market mechanics, prices, productions are determined by supply and demand in a competitive environment. Corporacy, prices are frequently controlled, inflated, or manipulated through monopolies and oligarchies. Government role, capitalism is supposed to act as a neutral referee, enforcing contracts and preventing fraud. That isn't happening. Corporatocracy, subservient to corporate interest, often subsidizing big business, granting bailouts, and deregulating industries in favor of profits. Innovation and competition. For capitalism relies on vigorous competition to drive innovation and lower consumer costs. Corporatocracy enters barriers are huge. Large companies use political influence and acquisitions to suppress smaller competitors. The overlap, how one becomes the other. While capitalism theoretically meant to distribute power across countless small businesses and individual entrepreneurs, uninhibited capitalism inherently allows companies to grow. When these mega corporations gain enough wealth, they frequently translate their economic power into political power. They achieve this primarily through lobbying and campaigning, financing, funding elections, paying lobbyists to shape litigation in their favor, regulatory capture, influencing or staffing government regulatory agencies. Regulatory capture, influencing or staffing government regulatory agencies, allowing corporations, which is what happened with this administration, allowing corporations to essentially write the rules they are supposed to follow. Privatization of profits, socialization of risks, securing taxpayer-funded bailouts or subsidies when corporations make poor decisions, thereby removing the risks normally associated with the free market. And that's why I hate LLCs. That was in the interest of the bar, not in the public interest. Because when people like my landlord break the law, they can get sued into oblivion. But the last one said, I got my LLC protecting me, so you can only get so much money. The debate, political and economic forums featured ongoing debates surrounding these two concepts. The consensus in many economic discussions on platforms like Reddit is that corporacy is a systematic distortion of capitalism. However, some critics of free market economics argue that corporacy is the inevitable final evolutionary stage of the unrestrained capitalism, as wealthy naturally concentrates into the hands of the few dominant corporations. Okay, so let's get into this corporacy. I did a video on this years ago when I first learned and how to make videos and learned how to use the internet, maneuver my way, and finding out how to find this stuff I read about. And it's getting easier. Corporacy is a political and economic system where corporations, conglomerates, and corporate elites control or heavily influence the state, including its policies, laws, and judicial systems. In this structure, the government primarily acts to protect and advance corporate interests over broader public welfare, which is illegal. Key characteristics: profit-driven priorities, short-term corporate profits and shareholder returns take precedence over social, labor, and environmental stability. And that's what we need, is stability. And thanks to Reagan shipping all those jobs overseas, that's why we're dealing with. And then now this knucklehead in office says he'll bring jobs back, but actually more are leaving the country. Key characteristics: profit-driven priorities, short-term corporate profits and shareholder returns take precedent over social, labor, and environmental stability. Deregulation: systems often featured minimal oversight, allowing businesses to operate with fewer restrictions on labor standards and environmental protections, which is a violation of the public trust doctrine. They took the oath and they have to enforce the public trust doctrine, and that just doesn't. It's the opposite. Concentration of power: monopolies and large conglomerates dominate the market, often crushing smaller competitors while advocating for free market rhetoric. And that's what is known as puffery. Corporate puff or puffery. Political influence: corporations influence governance through lobbying, campaign financing, and dark money. That's why we got to get rid of the lobbying. Or at least that's Citizens United. How is that in the public interest? Remember I did that piece from the preamble of the Rules of Professional Conduct, that laws are supposed to be created in the public interest, not parochial or further interest of the bar. It's law. What the hell? But you see, they're counting on your ignorance of the law and you not even trying to learn. Corporacy versus oligarchy and corporatism. These terms are often confused, but they have distinct meanings. Oligarchy broadly defines rule by small elite group. Corporacy, a specific type of oligarchy where the elite group consists of the leaders, owners, and shareholders of massive corporations. Corporatism, an entirely different economic model where the state organizes society into groups that serve the state's interest, often associated with historical fascist economies, essentially meaning the state controls the companies. Mussolini and Hitler did that during World War II. Actually, Mussolini did it first, and then Hitler said, "Oh, that's a good idea." So it's notable perspectives, academic and political critique. Scholars and economists argue that corporate dominance undermines democratic norms. Prominent economics such as Jeffrey Sachs have frequently used the term to describe the United States political landscape, citing disproportionate corporate power in legislation and bank bailouts. Social impact. Experts warn that when a government operates as a corporacy, political priorities, corporate welfare, this can lead to increased wealth inequality and reduced capacity of the government to address issues like climate change or worker well-being if those actions conflict with corporate profit margins. Advocacy for change. Organizations and legal scholars push for economic reforms such as nationwide early voting, campaign finance reform, and the reversal of judicial decisions like Citizens United. Now, there you go. So, Citizens United is not in the public interest. That was in the interest of the bar. That's how Clarence Thomas was able to afford his mobile home, getting free flights on private jets to parts unknown to go fishing. And the reversal of judicial to reduce corporate influence on elections. That's my key goal. And we could use the basic obligations for that. What is a corporacy in simple terms? Corporacy is an economic, political, judicial system controlled or influenced by businesses, corporations, and corporate interests. See, that's why I said we're a corporacy, not a democracy, because that's what's happening. I see people say that Congress should put patches on their coats or whatever, so that shows who they're working for, like they do on race cars and race car drivers. But is the USA a plurocracy or oligarchy? Gillen and Page do not characterize the U.S. as an oligarchy or plurocracy pro se. However, they do apply the concept of civil oligarchy as used by Jeffrey A. Winters with respect to the U.S. No, we're a corporacy. What is an example of corporatism? Confucian society is based upon families and clans and Eastern... Oh, I don't want to get into that. Let's go down. Oh. The United States is a representative democracy. This means the government is elected by citizens. Here, citizens vote for their government officials. These officials represent the citizens' ideas and concerns in government. Yeah, give me a break on that one. I mean, that's the way it's supposed to be, legally. But your public servants aren't doing that. If you read the basic obligations of public service, that'll help you get through it. Those are a bunch of laws they're breaking. Is Russia a plurocracy? It has, under the regime of Vladimir Putin, been vigorously characterized as a kleptocracy, an oligarchy, and a plurocracy, owning to its crony capitalism economic system. As of 2025 Corporate Perceptions Index, Russia scored 20 to 100 and ranked 157th of 182 countries. Fascism is characterized by the support of a dictatorial leader, centralized autocracy, militarism, forcible suppression of opposition. That's what's happening now. Belief in natural social hierarchy. Like our public servants, they gave themselves qualified immunity, but knowingly and willingly deprivation of rights. That's subordination to individual interests for the perceived interests of the nation or race, and strong regimentation of society and the economy. What is a true democracy? The pure form of direct democracy exists only in the Swiss cantons of Aspinall, wherever that is, and Glas. The Swiss Confederation is a semi-direct democracy, representative democracy with strong instruments of direct democracy. Yeah, I don't think so. Okay, so let's just go see what it's... Democracy is a system of government in which political power is vested in the people, derived from the Greek word demokratia, rule by the people, empower citizens to exercise this authority either directly or through freely elected representatives. Modern democratic systems are built on several foundational principles. Popular sovereignty. The legitimacy of government comes from the consent of the governed. Yeah, that was in the Declaration of Independence. Political equality. All eligible citizens have an equal right to participate in the political process, which they're trying to stop that now with voter suppression. The United States Constitution guarantees every citizen the right to vote, so these voter suppression laws are anti-constitutional. Rule of law. All citizens, including the leaders, are subject to the same laws typically outlined in a constitution. You know that's not happening. Just look up the rule of law. Read it. Majority rule, which I used to think that's how our country was run, based on majority rule, the greater good. The Constitution clearly, if you read it thoroughly, it clearly shows you that all public servants are supposed to work for what's in the greater good. The masses, we the people as a whole. While the majority rule with minority rights, while the majority determines policies, the fundamental rights and freedoms of minorities groups are legally protected against tyranny. And that's what I've been telling you, that I did a video on tyranny, and I think it was tyranny. I did so many videos, my mind goes in so many different directions because of all of you. I search the internet to find questions that you're looking for answers, and turning to your politicians. No, they're not going to, you begging them? No. Number one, use the oath. Remind them the penalties for violating the oath. And then you want to throw the basic obligations of public service at them. The rule of law. You know what the penalties are for violating the rule of law? Direct democracy is a system where citizens participate directly in making laws and voting on public policies rather than electing intermediaries. So it's a majority vote on whether people, like their politicians present laws, and then the people have to vote on them. Essential safeguards function effectively. Democracies rely on a healthy civil society equipped with free and fair elections that allow for regular, peaceful transfers of power, civil liberties, including freedom of speech, assembly, religion, and the press. And that's all disappearing. Freedom of speech, people are getting arrested for freedom of speech. I've seen some politicians get arrested for telling the military, hey, you're legally required not to follow unlawful orders because you'll go to jail. You won't get out for a really long time. The JAG-offs should be telling them that. The Judge Advocate General officers. I've had dealings with the JAG-offs, and I don't like them. Free and fair elections, civil liberties. Explore resources like the United Nations Democracy page for Freedom House. Break down and understand how these principles are measured and defended globally. A republic and a democracy are not mutually exclusive. A democracy is a system where supreme power rests with the people, while a republic, it is a specific structure of government where citizens elect representatives to make laws for them, adhering to the Constitution or rule of law. Democracy, system of power. Definition: power is vested in people who rule either directly or through freely elected representatives. Direct democracy. Citizens vote directly on laws and policies. We should do that. We need to do that. That big, beautiful bill, Imagine if they had to go through us to get that through. Representative democracy. Citizens elect officials to make decisions on their behalf. And they're legally obligated to make decisions on your behalf. But because people put them on a pedestal and think they can do what they want, and they got qualified immunity when they don't, when it comes to deprivation of rights, nobody has qualified immunity. Look up deprivation of rights. It'll tell you nobody has qualified immunity for deprivation of rights. And qualified immunity was established in 1967, under the good faith. Oh, man, that's... Republic, structure of government. Definition from the Latin res publica, public affair. It is a state where power belongs to the public and is not ruled by a monarch or dictator. So why are the Republicans, formerly known as the Dixiecrats, not the conservatives, were formerly known as the Dixiecrats, and they took over the Republican Party. Key feature, elected individuals represent citizens' body. That's why you hear these politicians talking about they're supposed to do what's in the best interest of their constituents. Constitutional republic, the government is limited by a foundational character like a constitution protects minority rights from the will of the majority. Yeah, we had a civil rights movement on that, and you know what they used to say when I was a kid during the civil rights, while that was going on while I was growing up? We used to talk about the Constitution, equal rights, DEI, diversity, equality, and inclusion. And most of the people in the United States, white, would say, we're not ready. We're not ready to stand up, live up to what was put on paper. The Constitution, all these laws, that I've been talking to you about, how they work together. Most modern nations, including the United States, are both. That's what I've been trying to tell people. Some people, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. And then other people, we're not a republic, we're a democracy. How they work together. Most modern nations, including the United States, are both. The U.S. is a democratic republic. I don't know why people can't understand that. It is a democracy because the people hold the power through voting. It is a republic because citizens elect representatives to govern rather than voting on every issue themselves. I would rather vote on every issue myself. Okay, so we're a democratic republic, okay? People, quit fighting with each other. Quit letting your politicians pit you against each other. I mean, you're looking to them to help you, and they're not doing anything, working for themselves, doing what's in their best interest. Think of this. Okay, politicians, they got the best health care, right? They got pension plans. How often do they actually go to work? Your pension plans, they took them away and replaced them with 401k and IRAs, and so that way Wall Street gets to play with your money. Tell me that isn't a corporatocracy? They get the best health care, and we go broke. If you read the public trust doctrine, it should be the other way around. And remember, there are public servants. Imagine you having a maid come over and you have to clean while she sits there and watches, and you got to pay her. That's ridiculous. All right, people, but I just wanted to get you through this, okay? And maybe you'll speak up, learn a little bit, Pick up a damn book. Well, you don't got to pick them up anymore. And just jump on the internet, and I'm showing you where to look. And all I'm talking about is the law itself. What is written. And ever since I read the Constitution that very first time, it became a dream of mine. It's just an illusion. The rule of law, just an illusion. You know, so many of us suffering from shattered dreams because of so many broken promises. And we need to work together. You know, I'm apolitical. I don't idolize politicians, you know, or, you know, these Hollywood figures. You know, I idolize you. You inspire me. When I read the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Magna Carta, became a part of me. And I was just a little kid, 10, 11 years old, 12 years old, 13 years old, questioning the teachers, why isn't this happening? And this is, you know, that's not on the curriculum. That's not what we're studying. Come on, if I understood this in grammar school, I mean, this should be taught in grammar school. You know, they should have the Constitution test. You know, these kids are a lot smarter than we were when I was their age, 55, 60 years ago. So if I learned this at 10 years old, or a lot of this stuff, so can they. If I understood the Constitution, so can they. And people, quit letting anybody tell you what any of this means. Use the letter of the law. And violations of the letter of the law is disinformation. Anything devoid the letter of law is disinformation. There's penalties for violating the letter of the law as well as penalties for disinformation, misinformation, lying. It's unethical. And you can file for ethics complaints. So don't forget OGE, Office of Government Ethics. So let's get on there. Let's get on this, people. You know, and I've been doing. I used to have a lot of correspondence, not from all politicians that I talked to, but some. And I found 2 letters from one of my state reps, or I forgot, but he eventually became president. And I wanted to talk about the basic obligations of public service, you know, the oath of public service, you know, the oath of public service, and then the basic obligations of public service, to be honest. That's how I started. And as soon as I mentioned the basic obligations of public service and that how all public servants are legally obligated to do what's in the public interest, and he blew me off. But, you know, I guess he was busy, you know, running for president and all that. But these are the things I approach politicians with, I battle with lawyers with. And the only reason I ever lost is because they cheated. They don't play by the rules, the codes, they don't abide by the laws. And, I mean, nobody understood what I was doing, what I was saying, because they don't like to read. Nobody cares about the law. Nobody cares that nobody's abiding by or living up to the Constitution, enforcing it. You know, I mean, you have the right to protest, and why are some protests protected and others attacked? I see big companies where they call, and next thing you know, the police are out there. And the only reason the police are out there is because the politicians are they're public servants. They're supposed to be working the public interest. At most, at worst, they should just put a couple cars in front of the company and just have the cops just stand out there and make sure nobody does any law breaking. But they don't do that. They antagonize, aggravate, and instigate, just so they could get those people to stop protesting for, you know, better working conditions, better working hours, sustainable wages, not going broke because, you know, their medical bills are too high. That's not in the public interest. Check the public trust doctrine. That'll help you fix it, all right? I need your help, and I can't do it alone. Just taking you through my mind on the internet. And I need your help. I need you to confront your public servants, just as I have, but with these laws. So, yeah, pushing, I don't know, 350, 400 videos. I know that's a lot to take in. But once you start reading this stuff like I did, it just sticks. And it's easy to understand. I've went through this with a lot of different people, and they always said they couldn't understand. I don't understand the law. I'm not a lawyer. And only the people that actually read it when I handed it to them understood it. I said, don't believe me, believe your eyes. And they did. I got a lot of people out there, well, throughout the years, not too many, these last few years, since this handicap thing, I can't get out, I can't walk too far. I need a wheelchair. If my legs were still working, I would still be down and dirty for we the people. You inspire me. Just that slogan alone. Our nation's creed. The dream that one day our nation will live up to its creed. We'll live up to what's been put on paper, especially that parchment the Constitution is written on, and all these laws that are in the books I read. People, in the court of law and Congress, that's nothing but theater. Congress, that's political theater. A lot of them people know what I know, and they aren't doing it. You should hear me when I watch them, yelling at them. I did a video where I was watching it and telling people what was going on and the laws that were being broken. And with the internet, you can fact check anything they say. Quit believing them. In my life, as a kid, I learned trust no one and question everything. If you grew up where I grew up and met the people I met, you would know. Trust no one and question everything. And as I started getting older, was getting arrested a lot. When my family first moved into Brighton Park back in '69, that's in Chicago, the whole neighborhood came to protest. Call us the N-word, told us to go back to Mexico. And gave my family hell until my parents moved out. They didn't stop till my parents moved from there out to another neighborhood. Landed it free. And the police did nothing. They said, you got to understand, these people, they grew up in the neighborhood, they were born here. Boys will be boys. A whole lot of stupid shit. And that's because nobody's living up to the oath and the requirements of the oath. And all my videos are requirements of the oath. And a whole lot of different politicians, lawyers, judges, alphabet agencies. And now that this stuff's on the internet, and the internet, it's on there, it's like you could look it up. Go to the DOJ website. They ain't doing that. FBI website. They ain't doing that. Department of Homeland Security. They ain't doing that. ICE. Go on their website. Go on everybody's website. And you'll see they're not doing their job. That's deprivation of rights. And nobody reporting each other, that's a conspiracy against rights under the color of law. You got to understand, no matter what court you go into, there's a conspiracy against rights under the color of law because nobody's playing by the rules and codes, and that's deprivation of rights for everybody. And since nobody reported for violating the rules and codes, that's conspiracy against rights under the color of law. I hope I made that simple for you. People said I do. I have a tendency of making things sound so easy. But you know what? It's because I only read the law word for word to the letter. I don't try to explain anything to anybody. I just read it. These are not my opinion. I don't post my opinion. I post the law. Thanks again for listening. You inspire me. When it comes to my people, we the people, I have nothing but love for you. And that's why I always use the Constitution, constitutional laws, is because they're very direct, and those are laws that can't be broken. Everything I post, those are laws that can't be broken. Some idiot said they were rudimentary. Well, yeah, because it's the law, and I didn't try explaining it. Because anything devoid the letter of the law is disinformation. You can't skirt the letter of the law, but they do. I have people try to explain it to me many a times, and every time I mention it, they say, well, you don't understand what it means. I say, I hope that's not devoid the letter of the law. You know what the penalties are for violating the letter of the law, and when you do that, that's information. Disinformation, misinformation. I says, what are the penalties for that? That's violating the code or the rules of professional conduct, because it says in there about honesty, integrity, trustworthiness, and you're not living up to any of that. If you read the preamble, the rules of professional conduct, it's like, the Boy Scout rules, All right, y'all, you have a good night. Nothing but peace and love. May your Creator always be with you and rain many blessings, joy, and happiness, y'all. Have a good night.